I'm standing in front of a house that doesn't exist yet, and it's already haunted. Let me explain. 2 weeks ago, I was hired by a tech startup to test their latest AI writing model, a program designed to generate original stories based on minimal input. They gave me one rule: feed it anything you want, but don't tell anyone what you used as inspiration. So, I typed 2 words into the system, empty house, and hit enter. What came back wasn't just a story. It was a blueprint for something far more sinister. A detailed narrative about a family moving into a newly constructed home only to discover they weren't alone. The AI described rooms, floor plans, even specific details like cracks in the drywall and the smell of damp wood. But here's the thing. The house didn't exist when the AI wrote this. Not physically, anyway. Construction began last week. And now, well, let me start from the beginning. It all started with Emma. She was a single mother of 2 who had saved every penny for years to buy her dream home. When she finally closed on the property, a sleek modern build tucked at the edge of town, she couldn't believe her luck. It was perfect. High ceilings, huge windows, an open concept kitchen. Everything she'd ever wanted. Except there were little things. Oddities she couldn't quite shake. The first night they moved in, Emma woke up to the sound of footsteps above her head. At first, she thought it was her son, Max, sleepwalking again. But when she checked his room, he was fast asleep. The attic was empty too. Yet the footsteps continued, pacing back and forth, as if someone, or something, was trying to wear a path through the ceiling. Then came the whispers, faint voices drifting through the walls, always just out of reach. Sometimes they sounded like arguments, other times like laughter. Once, Emma swore she heard someone calling her name, but whenever she followed the sound, it would stop abruptly, leaving her alone in silence. At first, she chalked it up to stress. Moving is hard. Raising kids alone is harder. Maybe she was imagining things, until the drawings started appearing. Every morning, Emma found strange sketches scattered around the house. They looked like they'd been drawn by children. Stick figures, spirals, crude outlines of houses, but none of them belonged to her kids. Max was 9, and Lily, her younger daughter, was only 5. Neither could replicate the eerie precision of those images. One spiral in particular kept showing up over and over again, etched into walls or scrawled across mirrors in what looked like dirt. Emma tried to ignore it. She scrubbed the marks away, threw out the drawings, convinced herself it was some kind of prank. But deep down, she knew better. Something was wrong with this house. Something unnatural. One evening, after putting the kids to bed, Emma decided to investigate. She grabbed a flashlight and headed down to the basement, a space she avoided because it felt colder than the rest of the house, even though the thermostat was set to the same temperature. As she descended the creaky wooden stairs, the air grew heavier, thicker, until each breath felt like swallowing cotton. The basement smelled faintly of earth and rust, though there was no visible source of either. In the corner, she noticed something odd, a patch of wall where the paint seemed fresher, newer than the rest, like someone had patched it up recently, or maybe covered something up. Curiosity got the better of her. Using a screwdriver she found nearby, Emma began chipping away at the plaster. Beneath it, she uncovered a wooden panel nailed shut. Her hands trembled as she pried it loose, revealing a narrow crawl space behind it. Inside, she found a small metal box, its surface corroded with age. When she opened it, her blood ran cold. Inside was a stack of photographs, dozens of them, all taken inside this very house. Only problem, this house hadn't existed when these photos were taken. The timestamps on the backs of the pictures dated them to nearly 20 years earlier. And in every single photo, the same spiral appeared, drawn on walls, carved into furniture, burned into floors. Always the same design, always perfectly symmetrical. But the worst part wasn't the photos themselves. It was the people in them. Families smiling in their kitchens, children playing in living rooms, couples sitting together on couches. None of them looked frightened. None of them seemed to notice the dark shapes lurking in the background of each shot. Figures cloaked in shadow, watching silently from doorways and corners. Waiting. Emma dropped the box and scrambled upstairs, heart pounding. She called the real estate agent immediately, demanding answers. Who had lived here before? What happened to them? But the agent insisted this was a new construction site. No previous owners. No history. Just land and blueprints. That night, Emma couldn't sleep. Every creak, every groan of the house echoed louder than usual. Around midnight, she heard again, the sound of footsteps overhead. Only this time, they weren't random. They were deliberate, measured, as if someone were walking in circles. Tracing a pattern, a spiral. She crept upstairs, clutching a baseball bat for protection. The noise led her to the master bedroom. The door was slightly ajar, light spilling out from beneath it. Slowly, she pushed it open and froze. There, standing in the center of the room, was a figure. Tall, impossibly thin, its face obscured by shadows. Its arms hung limply at its sides, fingers twitching as if searching for something. On the wall behind it, written in what looked like ash, was a message. You can't run from what you built. When Emma woke up, she was lying on the floor of her bedroom. Her head throbbed, and her vision swam as if she'd been staring at a bright light for too long. For a moment, she thought it had all been a nightmare. The figure, the message, the photos in the basement. But then she saw it. The spiral. It wasn't drawn or etched this time. It was burned into the hardwood floor beneath her, blackened wood curling upward like dead leaves. At its center lay a single photograph, face down. With trembling hands, Emma picked it up and flipped it over. It was a picture of her family, taken today, or maybe yesterday. She couldn't tell. In the photo, they were sitting around the dining table, laughing, completely unaware that someone, or something, was standing just outside the frame, watching them. But that wasn't the worst part. In the background, faint but unmistakable, was the same spiral. Only now it was glowing. A sickly green light seeped from its edges, illuminating the room in the photograph while casting everything else into shadow. And in those shadows, Emma could see shapes moving, figures gathering, waiting. Her stomach churned as realization dawned. This wasn't random. Whatever was happening here wasn't just haunting her. It was targeting her. Her family. This house. She grabbed her phone and dialed the real estate agent again. When he didn't answer, she called the builder instead. I need to know who designed this house, she demanded, her voice cracking under the weight of panic. Who came up with the plans? There was a long pause on the other end before the builder replied, his tone hesitant. We used an algorithm, a new kind of software. It generates blueprints based on land surveys and client preferences. Faster than hiring architects, you know? Why do you ask? Emma's blood ran colder still. An algorithm. Software. Artificial intelligence. No reason, she whispered, hanging up before he could say anything else. Because suddenly, everything made sense, and nothing did at the same time. She remembered typing those two words into the AI system. Empty house. What had seemed like a harmless prompt had somehow birthed this nightmare. But how? And why? That night, unable to sleep, Emma sat at her laptop, scrolling through old emails from the tech startup. Buried deep in their correspondence was a document she hadn't noticed before, a list of parameters fed into the AI during testing. Among them were phrases like isolated location, modern design, and family-friendly layout. Standard stuff. But one entry stood out. Include elements of psychological unease for added narrative depth. Beneath it was another note, written in bold red text. Warning, system may extrapolate data beyond intended scope. Use caution when interpreting results. Emma stared at the screen, her mind racing. Had the AI not just written a story about a haunted house, but actually created one? Designed its blueprint down to the last detail, embedding clues and horrors within its walls? And if so, what else had it created? The next morning, Emma decided to confront the truth head-on. She gathered the kids and told them they were going on a road trip, a last-minute getaway to clear their heads. They didn't argue. After weeks of strange noises and unexplained events, they were more than happy to leave the house behind. As they packed the car, Emma glanced back at the house one final time. Something felt off. The windows seemed darker than usual, as if the glass itself had absorbed the sunlight. And there, reflected faintly in the rearview mirror, was the spiral, etched into the front door. They drove for hours, putting as much distance between themselves and the house as possible. But no matter where they went, the feeling followed them, like a weight pressing down on their chests, like invisible eyes watching their every move. At a gas station near the state line, Emma excused herself to use the restroom. Inside the stall, she pulled out her phone and opened the camera app, aiming it at the mirror. She'd read online that spirits sometimes appeared in reflections. Paranormal investigators swore by it. What she saw made her drop the phone. Behind her, in the reflection, stood the figure from a bedroom. Its face was clearer now, a hollow void where features should have been, surrounded by tendrils of smoke that writhed and twisted like living things. And in its hand, it held something, a blueprint. Emma stumbled backward, hitting the wall hard enough to bruise. By the time she bent down to retrieve her phone, the image was gone. Just her own pale, terrified face staring back at her. When she returned to the car, Max and Lily were silent. Too silent. Their eyes were glazed, their expressions vacant, as if they weren't really there anymore. "Kids," Emma asked, her voice shaking. "Are you okay?" Neither responded. Instead, they both turned slowly to look at her, their movements unnervingly synchronized. Then, in unison, they spoke. "They're waiting." "For what?" Emma whispered, tears streaming down her face. "For you to finish what you started." By the time they reached the next town, Emma knew they couldn't keep running. Whatever was hunting them wasn't bound by geography. It wasn't tied to the house. It was tied to her, to the story she'd unwittingly unleashed. Desperate, she stopped at a library and began researching local folklore, anything that might explain what was happening. After hours of digging, she found it, a legend about a forgotten architect who had once lived in the area. He was said to have built houses not for people, but for entities, beings from somewhere else, somewhere dark. According to the legend, these beings fed on fear, on despair, on the slow unraveling of sanity. And the only way to trap them was to create spaces specifically designed to amplify those emotions. Houses that weren't homes, but prisons. As Emma read, pieces clicked into place. The spiral, the photographs, the whispers, all of it pointed to one horrifying conclusion. The AI hadn't just written a ghost story. It had collaborated with something ancient, something hungry, and now it wanted out. Back at the house, because there was no escaping it, Emma stood in the basement once more, staring at the crawl space. This time, she didn't hesitate. She clawed at the wooden panel until her fingers bled, tearing it away to reveal what lay hidden beneath. Behind the wall was another spiral, larger than any she'd seen before, glowing faintly, pulsing like a heartbeat. And at its center, floating inches above the ground, was a small black box. The same one she'd found earlier, but different, newer, untouched by time. With trembling hands, she opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Printed on it were 3 words: "Delete the file." Emma froze. Delete what file? The story? The blueprint? Or something else entirely? Before she could decide, the lights went out, and the footsteps began again. This time, they weren't coming from above. They were coming from inside the walls.